Alright, now we have dividing decimals, and we'll kind of again go through the process. You need to be able to do this by hand. The first thing you want to do is write the problem in what I call house format. And that is the division symbol that looks like I always call it a house. And we are going to put a number here, which I call outside the house. We're going to put a number here, which I call inside the house. And then our answer goes here, which I call above the house. So we're going to use that house format to help us divide these by hand. I know some students learned how to do this in a different country, and I know different countries teach the format a little bit differently. I would encourage you to try to figure out how your format relates to this format so that it'll be easier for you. If you need me to show you kind of different ways to do this, I can. But this is the traditional way we do the division. I think across the United States, at least in Texas, this is generally how it's taught. All right, so we put the problem in house format. And the way to remember this is I always say bottom out. So the top goes on the inside and the bottom, or the second number, goes on the outside. So I always say bottom out. That just helps me remember. If there's a decimal point on the outside, you're going to move it all the way to the right. Then move the decimal point on the inside the same number of places. And that sounds a little confusing, so I'll explain that when we get there. Then you'll write the inside decimal point directly above the house. Then you'll divide, and again, we might have all learned how to divide a little bit differently. I'll show you how I was taught and what makes sense to me, and if there's another way you divide, that's fine, as long as you can kind of see how I'm getting my answer. Alright. Again, I tried to give you plenty of space, but if you're out of room here, if this is too cluttered for you, just grab a sheet of paper and you can work the problems on separate paper. So I'll go through these. You're going to put the second number on the outside of the house and the first number on the inside of the house. So we have 0.3 on the outside and then 21.93 on the inside. Leave a little bit of space above it so you can write your answer there. We have one decimal place on the outside. I'm going to move it to the right. So I'm going to take the decimal point on the inside and move it to the right one space and write it directly above the house. Everything lines up. Very important to line everything up for this. Let me show you how we were taught to do division. I went to school in Houston, and this is how we were taught. You think, how many times does 3 go into 2? And it goes in 0 times. How many times does 3 go into 21? It goes in 7 times. How many times does 3 go into 9? 3 times. And how many times does 3 go into 1? 3 go into 3 1 time. Now that all divided nice and evenly. There was no remainders and leftovers and carry down. There was none of that. It was just divide, divide, divide. Normally, there's a lot of carryover and subtracting, and we'll go through that process on this next one. So just to be clear, the answer here is 73.1. On the next one, we're going to put the second number first, 0.4, then your house, 93.6. Move this over 1 time, so we're going to move this over 1 time and then straight up. If it helps, you're going to have 3 numbers before that decimal place. Anything else will go after the decimal place. Sometimes it helps to make those little blinks. Alright, and then the division I learned. How many times does 4 go into 9? Goes in 2 times. Then you multiply down. 2 times 4 is 8. You subtract 9 minus 8 is 1, and then carry down the 3. And you do that whole process again. How many times does 4 go into 13? 3 times. 3 times 4 is 12. Subtract is 1. Then you bring down, I'm running out of room, the 6. 4 goes into 16 4 times, and it goes in evenly, so there's no decimals. So your answer is just 234. I'm sorry about that if you write big like I do. I don't want you guys to run out of room. Alright, so 234 is your answer. Let's do that again. I'll write a little bit smaller this time. The second number goes first, or goes on the outside, so it's 0.09 divided into 278.3. And watch this carefully. We have 2 decimals on the outside, 1, 2. So we're going to move this 1 and then 1 more time. So we're going to put a 0 and then carry it up. So there should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 digits before the decimal point. And then sometimes it helps to just see the couple spaces you might need. And then we go through our division. 9 goes into 2 0 times. 9 goes into 27 3 times. 9 goes into 8 0 times. 9 goes into 83 9 times. And that's going to give us 81. With 2 left over, bring down your 0. 9 goes into 20 2 times. That's 18. Subtract. Then you add a 0 and bring it down. You'll notice you got 20 again. So again, 9 goes into 20 2 times, which is 18. And you should be catching on, oh, every time I do this, it's going to be 20. So these 2's are what we call repeating. When it's repeating, you put a bar on top, and that just shows that it's going to keep going and going and going with 2's. It'll never stop. If you start to notice that, the computer should tell you how to round it off, and it will tell you what to round to. So just don't keep going. If you're like, I keep getting the same answer over and over, just stop and round the way the computer wants you to round. Alright, let's try this again. Divide these off so I don't cram my work too much. We have 5 on the outside. And don't worry about the negative. We'll deal with the negative at the end. We'll just have 0.51835. Before I forget, the final answer for this one is 3092.2 repeating. Or 0.2, whatever it rounds off to. Alright, sorry. Let's get down to this one. Alright, now there's no decimal point on the outside, so we won't move this decimal point. It'll just go straight up. 5 goes into 5 1 time, evenly. 5 goes into 1 0 times. 5 goes into 18 3 times. We subtract and we bring down. 5 goes into 33 6 times. We subtract and bring down. 5 goes into 35 7 times, and it is even, no remainder. Or you don't have to continue. So I have a negative divided by a positive, so my final answer is going to be negative, and the answer to type in is negative 0.10367. Alright. Next one. Again, remember you can pause. I'm just going to keep going, but you can pause at any time and try one. And if you want to try it on scratch paper, that's fine. And then jump back into the video and see how you do. So feel free to pause at any time. I know it kind of just keeps going, but you stop whenever you need to, take a break whenever you need to, and just work whatever's comfortable for you at a time. So this is 0.2 on the outside, 1.04 on the inside. There's 1 decimal point, so I'll move this 1 time and up. That's 2 spots here, and then however many spots we need after. So 2 goes into 1 0 times. 2 goes into 10 5 times evenly. There's my decimal point. 2 goes into 4 twice evenly. So that one was pretty easy, just 5.2. It's a positive divided by a positive, so it stays positive. Alright. Let's keep on trucking along. We have a positive divided by a negative, so maybe make a note that our final answer should be negative. We have 0.06 divided into 1.8072. We have 2 decimal points here, so I'm going to move this twice and then up. That's 1, 2, 3 spots before the decimal point. And then we'll go ahead with the division. 6 goes into 1 0 times. 6 goes into 18 3 times evenly. 6 goes into 0 0 times. 6 goes into 7 1 time with 1 left over, and 6 goes into 12 2 times. And don't forget, we have a positive divided by a negative, so the answer should be negative 30.12. So none of these have been repeating. If they are repeating, you just stop and round off. Alright, the bottom 3. We have 32 divided by 0.005. The bottom number or second number goes out, so it's 0.005. Then on the inside it's 32. And if it helps to put 0.0 just to give you that decimal point, you can do that. There are 3 decimal points on the outside. So we're going to move it over 1, 2, 3 times. So from here, 1, 2, 3, and then extend your house. There's your decimal point. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places before the decimal point. Then we'll continue with the division. 5 goes into 3 0 times. 5 goes into 32 6 times, and that's 30. With 2 left over, bring down a 0. 5 goes into 24 times evenly, so the rest of these just become 0. And it's a positive divided by a positive, so my answer is just 6400. It would just keep being zeros. So 6,400, 6,400. Alright, the next one, we have 0.02 on the outside, 8.1 on the inside. It's a negative divided by a negative, which is going to make a positive. 2 decimal points on the outside, so 1, 2 on the inside. And up, that's 3 places before the decimal point. And then we'll start dividing. 2 goes into 81, 2 goes into 8 4 times with none left over. 2 goes into 1 0 times, and 2 goes into 10 5 times evenly. So that worked out nice. The answer is just 405. It will be positive because it's a negative divided by a negative, so it will be a positive 405. Alright, the last one, we have negative 30.07 divided by 0.002. So 0.002 on the outside, 30.07 on the inside. It's a negative divided by a positive, so my final answer will be negative. Sometimes I like to put that mark there so I don't forget. And then we have 3 decimal places here on the outside. 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, and one more 3, and then up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots before the decimal. Then we'll start dividing. 2 goes into 3 1 time with 1 left over. 2 goes into 10 5 times evenly. 2 goes into 0 0 times. 2 goes into 7, 3 times. That would be 6. With 1 left over, bring down the 0. 2 goes into 10 5 times. So So it's negative 15,035, because all 5 of those are before the decimal point, and it divides out evenly. So negative 15,035. So work these carefully. Give yourself plenty of space. If you're one that's usually kind of messy in your work, take your time on these. You want to stack everything as vertically as possible so you don't get too lost. These problems get a little messy. So really take your time and line up things as best you can. All right, and the last section that we're going to cover from Chapter 5 for this unit is just fractions and decimals, more conversion between fractions and decimals. So to convert fractions to decimals, we do so by dividing and adding zeros as necessary. And just remember that the bottom goes out. These are relatively easy to divide. So we have 1 divided by 8. 8 on the outside, 1 on the inside. Now we're going to have to add zeros, so we're going to put a decimal point and add some zeros. I just add 2 or 3 so I don't have to worry about it. And since I know 8 does not divide into 1, so 8 goes into 1 0 times. 8 goes into 10 1 time with 2 left over. Bring down a 0. 8 goes into 20 2 times with 4 left over. Bring down another 0. 8 goes into 40 5 times. Now that worked out evenly. If you had to keep going, just keep on adding zeros. So 1/8 is 0.125 as a decimal. We'll do this for the rest of these. If you were to go in your calculator, which we don't have right now, but if you were to do 1 divided by 8 in the calculator, that is the decimal you would get. Alright, let's keep going. 1 divided by 9, or 1/9. 9 on the outside, 1 on the inside. Again, I just put a decimal and add some zeros, at least 2 or 3, because I know I'm going to need some of those. And then I start my division. Bring your decimal point up. 9 goes into 1 0 times. 9 goes into 10 1 time, which is 9, with 1 left over. Bring down a 0. 9 goes into 10 1 time, which is 1 left over. Bring down your 0. 9 goes into 10 1 time. And you can keep adding your zeros, but you're just going to keep getting 1s over and over and over again. So once you notice I keep getting the same answer, stop. It will tell you how to round on the required practice. I said round to the 1,000th, so that's 3. 1, 2, 3. So our answer would be 0.111 if we were rounding to the nearest 1,000th. On the next one, 3 divided by 10. 10 on the outside. 10 on the outside, 3 on the inside. Go ahead and add at least a couple zeros just in case. Bring your decimal point up. And then we'll start. 10 goes into 3 0 times. 10 goes into 30 3 times, which is even, and we can just stop. You can add a 0 if you want to, but the answer would just be 0.3. And you might have already known that. Alright, the next one, we're going to have 5 divided by 4. So 4 on the outside, 5 on the inside, and I like to go ahead and add just at least a couple zeros just in case. 4, and bring it up. 4 goes into 5 1 time with 1 left over. Bring down your 0. 4 goes into 10 twice, which is 8. Bring down another 0. Subtract, you get 2, bring down your 0, it's 20, 4 goes into 20, 5 times evenly. So my answer is 1.25. 2/3. Some of you might already know we're going to have a repeating decimal on this one. It's the same idea. 3 on the outside, 2 on the inside, maybe add a couple zeros. Bring your decimal point up. 3 goes into 2 0 times. 3 goes into 20 6 times, which is 18. With 2 left over, bring down your 0. And you're saying the same thing. 3 goes into 20 6 times, that's 18. We subtract, we keep getting 2. Even if we add a 0 and bring down, 3 goes into 20 6 times. This is going to continue. As soon as you notice that it's going to continue, just stop. You would get another 6 on there if you were to do it again. And it's going to ask you to round to the nearest thousandth or whatever place it specifies. So if I'm rounding to the nearest thousandth, the next 6 is going to round this 6 to a 7. So it's 0.667. Some students get frustrated by that because it's just a repeating 6. But if you're specifically asking to round, we have to follow the rules of rounding, and it would be 0.667. All right, and the last one, 5/8. 8 on the outside, 5 on the inside. Add a couple zeros just in case. Bring that decimal point up. Then we'll work out the division. 8 goes into 5 0 times. 8 goes into 56 times. That would be 48 with 2 left over. 8 goes into 20. Why I'm blanking out. 16. There we go. 4, add another 0, bring it down. 8 goes into 45 times nicely. So my answer is 0.625. So this is dividing out fractions and converting them into decimals. And the key here is you add that decimal point right from the beginning and add some zeros. Bring that decimal point straight up, and then just work through the division. All right, the last part of what we're going to discuss in operations with decimals is comparing decimals. And I think this comes naturally, but maybe not. I'll kind of explain some different ways to see this. Some students just see this, and some students cannot see what I'm talking about. So we have 0.75 compared to 0.6875. And we're going to compare with less than or greater than. Now without the decimal points, if I cover those up, it's totally different. But with those decimal points, 0.75 is greater than 0.6875. Some students really struggle with that. If you look at the first decimal value, the first place, and compare those, whichever one of those is bigger, that first place, the bigger one wins. If those are the same, you look at the next one. The bigger one wins. If those are the same, you look at the next one. So you start in the 10th place and just compare those. Whichever one's bigger wins. So on the next one, these kind of look like the same number, especially if we take off the decimal points. They look like the same number, but they're not. If I look at the 10th place and the 10th place, it becomes clear that the second one's bigger. So I open my inequality, I open my comparing symbol, which I tend to call my alligator. I open my alligator towards the bigger number. Again, if I look at these numbers without the decimal point, it's a very different story. But if I just look at the 10th place, then it becomes clear that the second number is bigger. So I open towards the second number. This last one, they threw us a curveball. 2/7 compared to a decimal. Well, I don't know what 2/7 is as a decimal, so we're going to use the skills we used before. Ooh, I better give myself more room. 7 on the outside, 2 on the inside with some zeros. And then we'll divide it out. Bring that up. 7 goes into 2 0 times. 7 goes into 20 twice with 6 left over. Whoops. Bring that down. 7 goes into 60